from Kakila. Can we have any volunteer to lead us in a word of prayer?
I can volunteer.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, good evening. My name is Kampala, and I would like to lead us in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this afternoon. We thank you, Lord, for granting us life, granting us opportunity to be able to study online and to share what you have granted to us. We ask that you bless everyone that is joining in. And Lord, we ask that you bless us even as we study together, that we may be indeed able to close all our learning gaps together.
You can complete from out.
We pray all this believing in your name.
Where's my phone?
Amen. Amen.
Okay, thank you so much, Teacher Flavia. We want to welcome all the schools that are joining this call. We are going to start, and the rest will be finding us on the way. We want to welcome Teacher Flavia to lead us through this session. Teacher Flavia, thank you so much for volunteering to take us through this session, and we are good to start. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much. I would request share for you. I have a small technical problem on my laptop. A very good evening to you. I would like to welcome you this afternoon to this economics session where we get to prepare for our exams. I know some of you have already started your mocks and you are really getting into the mood and doing the final opportunity. We have over the past 2 months and probably
sorry, we have lost Teacher Flavia, but she's getting back. Sorry. Let's give us some few minutes and we see what is really happening as we wait for her to come back. She's coming back. Let's give her some few minutes and then we shall be there. Okay.
Someone is lifting.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to teacher Flavia. By now she should have started, but unfortunately she has lost network. Let's give her some minutes as she gets back, and then we see what to do. Her network was really disturbing, but I'm very sure she's getting back, and then we shall get started. She's back on a call, but let's give her some minutes. Teacher Flavia. Teacher Flavia.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Sorry about that. My network is very flimsy this afternoon. I don't know why. It's been okay. But
okay, now it's clear.
Now it's clear.
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to share my file.
Okay.
If it's possible, if it's easier on your side, please, you could start it off and then we can start off. It's taking a little longer my side.
Let me first ask you to share from your side, first try, and we see how possible it is.
All right. Okay. Okay.
They're saying they're not getting us. I think it is now. This is the video, right?
It keeps saying.
Yes.
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 Teacher Flavia.
Yes.
Yes.
We allow it. We need to see us. How do you do the picture? You do it for I'm seeing as if the camera is on. No. And then when you send them one. What's it? You heard the video, right? I syndicate on I syndicate on I syndicate on honestly. We get the same. So we're gonna syndicate. Oh, we sent one with this one. It is the one who sent us this. Direct here. That's indicate one. We sent for this one. Hello guys, we're not getting it. No, I see this is like a chat. So this one's with direct messages. This is the one that access to everyone. I'm not seeing them. Now this one is considered saying that I thought it is actually one at where is a direct. You know, you can't use it with direct. Hello. Hello. People very quiet here.
Sorry.
Hello?
Okay, I'm just going to have to continue, unfortunately, without this PowerPoint. It is not behaving on this side at all. Okay, share with buddies.
Yeah, Flavia, I'm trying to get there. Just give me 1 minute.
It looks like it is accepting this side as well.
I think people are still figuring it out. Because silent. Now, this is including this same guy, right? This link.
So I'm going to, as it.
Okay. There we go. Are we okay now?
Yes.
Can you all see?
Yeah, we are saying so.
Okay, first of all, I'll start by apologizing. It can't work if it is PowerPoint. I'm using my phone because my laptop sound is not good, but we shall be good to go. I would like to welcome you once again and thank you for coming together as a nation to work together. So today, economics, our time has been taken up by a few hiccups, so we shall quickly dive into the presentation. And we will start off by mostly looking at how to prepare for examination. And we will give a few tips on question approach and interpretation. We'll open up for discussion. And thereafter, we shall basically point ourselves in the last few, maybe 10 or 5 minutes. We will then be able to point ourselves into a direction of what do we actually contribute to the economy as we come out. Many times we study a subject, but we don't know where it is pointing us or where it is taking us. So it would be very good to just look at some of those professions and talk briefly about them. And many times when we understand where we are going, it makes it easy for us as we go in that direction to actually prepare ourselves for it. So examination preparation and question interpretation, that's going to be very important for you as an economics student to understand how the questions are set and also to be able to position yourself in a way that you can give. Yes, please.
Let me hope, let me hope to share such that our screen looks bigger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
So I take this off?
Yes.
Okay.
Kindly let me know whether it is there.
I can see it.
Okay, we can continue.
Okay. Yes, so when we know where we are going, it becomes easy for us to prepare. Now we were on the slide number 3, I think it is, that examination is important for us to understand how questions are set. It is so detailed that we even have to know the wording, because a slight change in wording can actually mean a different condition, a different interpretation. So it's very important for us to understand what is being asked and for us to position ourselves in how to be able to respond. The status of these questions dictate the nature of the answer to be given. And I think you've seen that in the previous preparations that we have had, that they actually dictate how you should be able to answer the question. As an economist, as a policymaker, you will need to be able to speak exactly what the situation needs you to respond to it. And the student is also expected to be in line with the wishes of the setter for proper interpretation. That is the foundation that we are moving into this afternoon session with, that the examiner who is giving you these questions, who is setting these questions for you, wants you to give them answers in a particular way. And our job today, this afternoon, is to know what is that particular way that we should be able to position ourselves. How should we be able to understand these questions and be able to give the questions that have been set for us. So we have to understand the parts of a question. That one is very, very important for each one of us to know, that every question that is given to you has its aspects. It has three parts of a question. There are mainly 3 parts of a question. And this determines the nature of answer to be written. These different parts of the question. So when we're reading a question in economics, we have to read it and read it again, because we have to be able to identify those 3 parts in that question. And each of those parts has to be properly interpreted. Your comprehension for economics has to be able to give you the kind of answer that is expected. Now, the first part is called the qualifier. Now, qualifier is mainly a word or a group of words that indicates what you as a student, you as a learner should be able to answer. You as a respondent to be able to present for the examiner. It is a set of words or a group of words that indicates what the respondent should give to the question. And an example can be examine. That is a qualifier. An examine is calling you to be able to look at it critically and examine the features that have been asked of you in that particular question. We shall be able to look at some examples in the next slide. Another example of a qualifier is assess. Assess, okay? The word assess coming in a question, coming into your question is really just trying to qualify you to say, can you assess the advantages and disadvantages? Can you assess the weaknesses of this policy? Can you assess the strength of this theory as compared to this country, economic developing country? Assess. And it goes for certain other incidents that you must be able to put together as a student. Analyze is another. Even how is actually a qualifier. It's a simple qualifier. Maybe next time we shall be able to look at some of those hierarchies where they start from simple to complex words. How do we start from simple? Now, a word like how is the employment rate of Uganda compared to the employment rate of, say, Rwanda? The word how is calling you to have a lot of information about the two different environments of work, and it's asking you to give characteristics of the different one and those other similarities in between. So comparing and contrasting, how are they compared? That is a compare and a contrast. Again, why is another word that is falling under the category of a qualifier. State the challenges of unemployment in Uganda. State them. Now, it wants you to basically state them and maybe give a small narrative on each, but stating is a qualifier. It is calling you, once you read the word state, it already puts you in the mood of, oh, what does the examiner now want from me? When you read another qualifier which says give, then you also put yourself in that same position. Let's go on to the next part of the question. The other part is keywords. Keywords indicates what the respondent must work upon. For example, the causes. What are the causes of inflation in Uganda? That's a very good example of a keyword. Now, once you see a cause, the word causes, then they're asking you to be very particular about what you're going to be indicating as a respondent in that answer. Another keyword is effects. Another keyword is intentions, okay? What does the government intend to do? It is very important for you to understand what are those things that they want to put out? What are those things that they have set out to do? While there is a challenge with the unemployment, what are those other things that the government wants to put out to mitigate the challenges that unemployment presents? And those are keywords. So again, parts of a question we have seen so far, the qualifier, and then we have gone ahead to see the keyword, but now the third part is the concept. So in any question that is going to be presented to you as a student or as an economic student, any question that is going to be presented is going to have three parts: the qualifier, the keywords, and finally the concept. Because it's an economics question, it has to have an economic concept. And in concepts, we shall basically see that they are not any far from the different topics and the subtopics and sub-themes that you're going to cover. And we know that in economics, we have been given a vast of 16 topics. All of those present concepts. They present subtopics. And those are the areas that we must be able to comfortably sail and navigate. So any question is going to test you on a concept, an economic concept. And that's what we will look at a little bit more. So the concept indicates what is being examined. For example, price mechanism, that's a concept. It's also a topic that we're going to have in all these 2 years that we are studying this discipline of economics. Inflation is another one, which is a topic and which we have probably all done by now. Demand, the forces of demand and supply, mergers, unemployment, money and banking, and many more topics. Like I have just said, we have 16 of those topics that are given to us in our syllabus coverage of economics. So let's look at some examples of these 3 parts of the question. Our very first question here is explain the reasons for unemployment in Uganda. Now that question, for me as a student reading it, I am going to be able to identify quickly that the word explain would fall under the category of a qualifier because it's asking me to explain. But if it's alone as a word explain, it may not have a context for me to draw my explanations. But the context now is being drawn and saying, explain the reasons. So I know that I have to give an explanation of reasons, okay? And reasons means that I must be able to argue my case out. So I'm explaining reasons. But if it stops there, the question is not complete until it has an economic concept, which is unemployment. So immediately I will zoom into unemployment and leave all the other topics because now I know my question is taking me into unemployment. And you will hear your friends say, they brought questions about unemployment. Oh, they brought questions about competition and market structures because the concepts were market structures. And now the question about market structure can fall from anywhere. You have to know its qualifier, you must know its keyword, and then you must be able to give a good justification on the economic concept. That's very important. Many times we know the concept and we have read the concept and we are very happy about the concept, but then we have failed to understand what the qualifier is asking us to do. We have failed to actually give the keyword and be able to position ourselves in the setting where the setter wants you to be. So you could know the concept and know it very well. You can speak about it, you can discuss it, but now are you able to examine it from the qualifier's point of view? Are you able to narrow it down to the keywords that have been put there for you? And then are you able to now shoot forward into the concept? Again, another question that is there for us is assess the role of competition in an economy. Now, under assess the role of competition in an economy, what does competition bring on the table of an economy? We're looking at a table, for example, of many things. This particular time it is an economy, and we're saying, what is the role of competition when it comes into an economy? So again, assess becomes your qualifier. You're trying to look at the bad and the good, okay? That's why it is assess. It is a neutral word that helps you to look objectively at the other side and also the other side, the good side and the bad side as well. So assess the role of competition in an economy. Assess the role of competition in an economy. Already, assess is big. You don't know what next until you know role. Then you know, oh, I'm assessing a role. I'm assessing a significant, I'm assessing the purpose, okay? The purpose of competition. Once competition comes in, it cancels all the other economic concepts, all the other different topics. And so it is calling your attention to just competition. So every question you're going to find in your papers, in your mocks, in your examination is going to basically have these, and that would be very important for you to appreciate. Now, once you have a question, you now need an answer. Yes, once you have a question, you now need an answer. Now, it's very good for you to interpret the question very well, like we have just said and spent some time on that slide. But it is even equally more important for you now to understand the right answer. You've heard of people who say, we're backfiring, okay? Yeah, no, that was not the answer that was needed. You're supposed to look at it this way. it becomes very complicated and becomes a very discouraging conversation, especially after a tough exam. So the answer must be very, very critical to you as a student, that you actually give the right answer. You may have good information, but it's easy for you to backfire if you don't know this. So the parts of an answer are mainly two. The first one is the statement of the point. You must be able to give, you should be clear. This should be very clear, clearly answer the question and go away from vague statements, okay? Because it will lead you to a loss of marks if you just give vague. And you know very well that when you also give vague statements, you actually run out of time. You run out of time, you're not able to finish because you want to put everything there and you want the examiner to be kind enough to think about the right answers. Speak out, sort for yourself what you need. We need to move away from there as economic students and actually stick to the statement of the point. Avoid hanging answers and ensure that every statement of the point has a qualifier. For example, the size of the market. Don't just say market, no. You have to say the size of the market will determine the price that is accorded to the goods or the service in the economy. The size of the market, the size qualifies it. If you just say the market, well, maybe you get a few points here and there, but if you find the examiner who is really looking for a very serious student, you may miss those marks. Instead of just saying skill, you have a statement of a point and say the level of skill, because you're talking about unemployment and you're saying that the level of skill of the labor actually discredits it and accords it to be unemployed. It is not just the skill, because anyone has a skill to present, but the level of technical skill required to match for the job now becomes the right answer. So that is very important. The statement of the point is very, very important. The next is the explanation of the point. After you have put the statement, you don't just write the level of skill and leave it there. You have to be able to explain your point. What do you mean by level of skill? There's so many skills out there, but the level of technical skill required for the jobs, the formal jobs, and everybody wants to be able to fit in there. The education is not helping us to skill correctly for the jobs that are available. And so there's a mismatch, or there is an overproduction of skill. And so you have an saturated market, and therefore you have unemployment. So you have to be able to explain your point to the level where you take it home. Don't leave it hanging, like avoid hanging answers. Ensure that every statement of the point has a qualifier, and then go ahead and explain your point to make sure it fits within the answer that the examiner or the setter is looking for. So again, this should clearly expound on the statement of the point, and the respondent, who is you, should restrict himself to the point statement. Restrict yourself, don't go beyond, you become vague. Explanations in economics should bring out the how and the whys. We should underline that part. The explanation in economics should bring out the how and the whys as the question demands. They call for critical thinking and they prompt us to apply the concept in our everyday life. So once again, I think that is something that we missed out in the very beginning. Your economics answers and interactions, you should quickly be able to identify their life, identify their application. And I think that is one thing that we shall see later in the next slides, to see that some of these questions are actually trying to test you to see how applicable is your theory into the practice of the economy of Uganda. The one that is most familiar to you, the economy of the world, probably the one that you have read with, but you have probably not interacted with. But our everyday life, every day you wake up and you go into the market space, there's a lot of economics around you. There's a way, there's negotiation that is happening. There's a way prices are being set. Discrimination is being set. Someone is being asked for so much and the other is being asked for so little. There's a lot of economics at play. So take your theory out of the textbook and bring it out into your everyday life, and then be able to explain answers very well. Okay, we'll then look at what is it that we find in paper 1. Paper 1 and paper 2, by the way, we don't have any discrimination in terms of topics. The same concepts, same topics can be picked on and put in paper 1, and also the same concepts can be examined further on also in paper 2. But we want to know, when for paper 1, what are we supposed to be? What kind of mindset do we walk into this paper with? Now, paper 1 tests learners on the knowledge of economics theory and the concepts without emphasizing application. It just wants to know, how much do you know in this theory? How much of these concepts have you understood? Understood. How much are you able to recall? How much are you able to recall correctly and present it as the examiner would like you to bring it forth? So this is testing your knowledge. So as you read, understand the theory, connect the theory, understand the concepts, connect the concepts to the theory that has been given to you, be able to explain it, be able to recall it. You're able to list, if you're asked for a question that is a lower order thinking question that is asking you to list, to recall, to remember, are you able to remember? How much of this is in memory? So it tests you on the knowledge. That is what we call the lower order thinking. And it doesn't emphasize the application. We shall see that application now is emphasized in the paper 2. Now, again, it requires the student to have a good knowledge of the economic theory and the concepts of economics. Questions are open-ended. They are non-restrictive, allowing the respondent to draw from a variety of examples from the world, okay? So you can draw your examples from anywhere, for as long as you have been able to read, appreciate, you have been able to open maybe 1 or 2 case studies and you have understood them. For every concept of economics, it would be very good for you to familiarize yourself with a case study. And many times the case studies are the things that we see every day. When you get out of school, when you go into the market space, you will see many case studies at play that you can actually begin to document, and they can become very helpful for other students to come after you. So again, the keywords such as outcomes, roles, causes, and contributions. And you are also advised to use the present continuous tense, like the different causes of unemployment are. This is the present simple tense, and it implies that these scenarios are part of our everyday life. So when you're answering such a question, don't answer it as if it was in the recession seasons of 1940s, the recessions period. You do not answer it as if it was a past tense. You answer it because it is a challenge. It's an economic challenge. It is one of those topics that is termed as the economic challenges. So it is with us. Present continuous, present simple tense. This is paper 1, testing your knowledge and testing the theory and concepts that you have been able to understand over the past 2 years. Now in paper 2 is where we emphasize application. Remember, in paper 1, we're talking about knowledge, recalling, remembering, memorizing of these theories. When we come to paper 2, this tests learners on the ability to apply those concepts. And that is the beauty about economics. It's a beautiful discipline, big discipline. All the other disciplines we shall see eventually in our very last present slide, that we have so many professions coming out of this wonderful discipline because it really is applicable in our everyday life. So in paper 2, you're going to mostly be examined on application in the context of Uganda. It will also require you as learners to have facts about your Ugandan economy. And that is something that we talk about when I am talking to my students. I challenge them to understand the economics of the country in terms of numbers. For example, when it comes to demography, you need to know your population statistics because you're going to be talking about population and labor. You must know the population statistics. How much of the Ugandan population is actually productive? How much is dependent? How much is independent? And where is the burden? Where is the burden lying? When we talk about unemployment, what sector of the economy is it affecting the most? Why is it a critical economic challenge? Because it's affecting the most productive and the biggest part of our population. So it's very important for you to understand the facts about your economy. Go ahead, Google, research, and find out what is it, the pyramid, population pyramid, how does it look like? When you look at the unemployment rates, can we be able to see what unemployment levels are we talking about in the country? When we talk about increasing, for example, when you talk about the non-educated, non-employed and non-trained, what kind of population are we talking about that falls in the category of the net? That's a critical index that we must be able to go with. So we need to have some figures. And when you write your answers, you need to be able to know what is the population size of the country, how many fall between this age and that age. Why is it critical that they must have education? Why is it critical that the government has intervened with the curriculum change to be able to attend to the youngest population in the world? You know that Uganda has the youngest population in the world, and that has economic implications. So again, this is paper 2, where you must be able to have some kind of statistics that you go in and they're off head. Paper 2 is also testing for solution. It's a solution questions. They require you as a candidate to use the tense, past tense and present continuous tense. Because you're giving a solution, you must be able to show us where we are coming from, what we must do so that we can get to a better destination. So once again, you're going to have to be giving recommendations. You're going to have to be giving in your perspective as a policymaker, as a young policymaker, what are your recommendations to government? In the recent budget, what would be your recommendations? Where do you think government should put most of its budget? Those are now questions that you're likely to find in paper 2. They require you to think. They require you to give your analysis. So there are no specific topics for each paper. The question for both papers are selected from the same content, and both papers have both section A and B. One tests for knowledge and understanding, while the other tests for application of the concepts into the Ugandan setting, while paying a lot of attention on how and why. How and why. So quickly, we shall then now go to just run through the topics that we have. We said we have 16 topics in our syllabus, our Ugandan syllabus, and those basically are introduction to economics, price theory, production theory, market structure, national income, the structure of the Ugandan's economy, and then we slide on to economic growth and development process and choice of a development strategy, development of agriculture and industry. There we go with population and labor, employment and unemployment. Then we finally move into money and banking with its relation of inflation. We also look at inflation also related to employment and unemployment. And then we also look at public finance and fiscal policy, international trade. There you go. Economic development and planning, public and private enterprises. So these are the 16 topics that have been clearly cut out for your 2-year course, where you're able to build onto this knowledge. When you finally go and take your economics a little bit further, you're able to build it on to much more. Let's go on to the next slide, which is talking about the examinable areas in economics. So in economics, you basically be asked about causes. And when I talk about examinable areas, I'm relating this slide to the previous slide. So once again, if I said causes, I would probably talk about causes of, for example, I would say causes of unemployment, okay? Causes of, the causes of rural-urban migration. There, I'm still talking about population, okay? And those causes are going to be examined. Then we shall look at solutions. What are the solutions of the high level of unemployment? What is government's recommendation? How is government coming in? So all these areas are examinable, and we shall look at some of them playing out in the questions that we're going to look out for. I'll keep coming back to this slide in the following slides. The outcomes, you have to be very comfortable with outcomes. What does it mean when you get a question that is asking you for outcomes? What does it mean when they ask you for role and contribution? What is the role and contribution of for example, of money and banking investment? What is the role of foreign investors coming into an economy? What's the role of mergers? Why do we talk about mergers? So the importance, the significance, the role, and the purposes, all these fall under role, contribution, and importance. We will look at this again when we come to intentions. In the next slide, it has been blown out bigger, and also conditions in the next slide has also been blown out. Intentions, when you are being examined about intentions, this means the common terms that are used by setters to indicate intentions. And these ones are, for example, objectives. That is in the next slide. Objectives, aims, purpose, rationale. When they're asking you about intentions, you will find words that fall under that category, and they will be words like objectives. What are the objectives? What are the aims? Okay. What is the purpose? What's the rationale? Why? Even the word account for is really falling under the category of intentions. Now, some of these questions will be direct, while others are going to be very indirect and quite complicated. And many times students can struggle and say, I didn't understand that question. It was a tricky question. So maybe the examiner wants to take you to think a little bit deeper. And again, it takes me back to what I said earlier, that yes, there are lower order thinking skills, and most of our examinations will fall under that category. But when a paper is quite challenging, it also tests for high order thinking skills, and it takes you to think a little bit more. It challenges you more. It doesn't just give you the question as state the objectives, no. It will give you those simple questions, but then it will keep building up. And towards the end of the paper, you will now find more indirect questions that are quite tricky. But today, let us see some of those examples so that we are able to familiarize ourselves and know what is this question really asking for. So if you find a question that is asking for the objectives, aims, purpose, rationale, motive, asking for accounting for, then you are actually going to have a direct question. It will be very easy for you to know and state, because it's at the lower end of lower order thinking skills. Such questions will be very easy for you to interpret because the keyword is quite leading. It shows you, the word shows you. And one of these examples that we have for us here is, what are the objectives of measuring national income in Uganda? What are the objectives of measuring national income in Uganda? What are the aims? Why do we measure? Okay, what's the purpose of doing it? Why do we even think about it? How does it help us if we know our national income? How does it compare us with other nations? So some of those are leading questions. When you see the word objectives, then you quickly position all your answers. Whatever you have read about national income, you now begin to reflect on it. You stop, reflect on it for about half a minute, and now position all your answers to actually answer the aims of measuring national income, the objectives, the motive. What is the motive? When you're asking for national income. The second question can be, explain the aims of compiling price indices in an economy. Explain the aims of compiling price indices in an economy. So what is the agenda? What is it? What is the goal of comparing prices in an economy? And that is a leading question. But it could be more tricky, and it could be a little bit more complex, calling you to think a little bit more. And where's that? And that can be indirect questions. And indirect questions, such questions are not easy to interpret because the keyword is hidden. And one would ask, why would the examiner want to hide the question? Because they want to be able to get out of you critical thinking skills. Critical thinking skills. So the intention is hidden, the word is hidden, and so it becomes hard for you to be able, in the next slide, to be able to interpret this question. So indirect questions. Why is it necessary to encourage economic liberalization in Uganda? Account for the need to promote economic liberalization in Uganda. Those questions, they could be quite tricky, okay? The intention is to target benefits. That is, the candidate must turn the benefits into objectives. So once again, when you're reading, you are reading a whole lot of knowledge. That knowledge must be put into context. It is very hard for you to read the question as it is going to come. That is called spotting. If you're able to do it, that is good. But many times you may not be able to spot exactly what the examiner is going to bring. So that means you take time to read and understand the context, so that in whichever way the question presents itself, you're able to reflect and think, and then you remodel your answers to fit what he wants. And for me, sometimes it has been a very good practice to write down all the small points that you know about the concepts that has been examined. You write them, write the concepts, write the small notes about the concepts that you have been reading. And then you come back again to the question and now read. So then you say, this is the concepts, these are the things that you know about this particular topic or this particular concept, economic concept. How am I going to now translate those small bullet points into what the examiner must read? You must have that kind of skill as well. It's very helpful because most of the time you have the right information, but the way you present can be actually a make or do. It can either make you into a first grade, or it can give you your A score, or it can throw you down to a lower score because of the way you presented your information. So both the benefits and objectives have the same explanation in here because they're asking for benefits, but they're also asking for the objectives. And now if you know the objectives, you can turn them around into benefits. If you know the benefits, you can turn them around into objectives. Condition questions. Remember, we're also going to be examined on condition questions. That's the next slide. A condition is a situation, a fact that seems to be very paramount or necessary for something to happen or to be done. Condition questions require one to give a condition that justifies one's action. With such questions, the learner will be encouraged to use qualifiers such as when there is a good education system that matches the demands in the market to what the supply of labor should look like, then you are likely to have a condition of employment. So you're giving when, and you're creating a condition that must happen before something happens. So your qualifiers are going to be when, where, okay, where there is equal opportunity for buyers and sellers. Where there's unequal opportunity, you're creating a condition. These now are qualifiers, and I hope we are together today. I'm really doing most of the talking, but we shall have time when we can discuss. Also when marking a statement of the points, it is very important for us to be able to understand questions that call us to create a condition. What are the conditions of a good economy? What are the conditions of a fair competition? What are the conditions of a demand and supply? The equilibrium of demand and supply in the market space, what are those conditions? So the condition questions call us to be able to talk about the environment that is going to be favorable or paramount or necessary for something to happen or something to be done. Now, one of the questions here is, under what circumstances may price mechanism be encouraged? That is a condition question. It's asking you for what features must be in place for price mechanism to be encouraged. This was something else that I just added to it. It wasn't part of the examinable, but I thought it would be important for us to have a vivid explanation on it. Compare and contrasting questions. Compare and contrasting questions can be very easy for us to understand, especially if we look at this diagram that I have put in here. It's the next slide. Sorry, I don't know if you have it. No, you don't have it. Compare and contrast, basically similarities and differences between two economic concepts. So you have two economic concepts. So when they ask you to compare and contrast, that means that each of these concepts has unique features about it. Those have to be put separately. And then these two have something similar. So that's where the question of compare and contrast brings it brings its feature, which we have to identify with as students of economics. That it means that everyone has a unique feature, but they also have a common. So if you're looking at sets, for example, remember when we used to draw sets, you have two circles intersecting, one part which is completely one set, the other part which is completely another set, but it also has a point of intersection, which are the shared characteristics. So let's go to examples of questions in our next slide. Explain the factors that are responsible for the instabilities in price of agricultural products in Uganda. Now that's a very good question. It's calling for you to be able to know, first of all, that the prices of agricultural products in Uganda can be unstable. But it also is calling for you to be able to know what are those factors that cause that instability. So the answers should focus on what causes an increase or decrease in prices of agricultural products. You must be able to know that. And one of the sample answers here is that, for example, a long gestation period of agricultural products. The supply of agricultural products cannot be increased in the short run, which leads to shortages in the short run. And that causes an increase in prices because the supply is low, the demand is going to outmatch what is on the market. However, supply increases in the long run when there is a harvest season, as farmers harvest and bring to the market what they have harvested. It leads to a decrease in prices. So that is a sample answer. But you look at it and you see that it has its parts. They're asking you explain. They're also asking you factors. Okay, so those explain and you know factors, and then you know instabilities in prices. Again, you have another part that brings the question home: agricultural products in Uganda. So all these parts of the question are enabling you not to give vague answers. Underline the key words in any question so that you're able to give what the examiner is looking for. Do not leave out Uganda and maybe talk about something else, another country, because they're asking you to bring it in the context of Uganda. Do not talk about industrialized product because they're asking you for agricultural products. They have their features that are specific to them. Okay, so we shall quickly go on to the next slide. There we go. Sample question next is, explain the causes of inflation in Uganda. Now here, you should emphasize and you should be able to throw emphasis and not put on what triggers prices to rise, but not necessarily being high. Okay, emphasis should be put on what triggers prices to rise, but not necessarily being high. Explain the causes of inflation Uganda. So you're looking at inflation, you're looking at the purchasing power. Now, you're not looking at what brings a high price, but you're actually saying what is triggering the prices to rise. Very, very important. Explain the measures that have been taken to increase the rate of economic growth in Uganda. This requires you to give the measures which are already on ground. And therefore, using past tense, past participle, has or have can be important, but suggestive answers are not applicable in this case. And one of the answers that you could have there would be improved infrastructure. Infrastructure that has been improved, for example, roads constructed helps, and it lowers the transport costs for these goods. And they come to the market without being compromised or high costs. So if there's improved infrastructure, it is likely to attract people to invest, but also to increase on outputs that are being produced. Okay, so every question is important for you to be able to underline the qualifier. Okay, you're able to underline the keywords, and then you're also able to now finally look at the economic concept. So in here, you have a qualifier explain, okay? Then you have measures, okay? And then you have economic growth as the economic concept. So underline those words because it keeps reminding you not to go off track. Another sample question. Explain the measures that have been taken to increase the rate of economic growth in Uganda. Explain the measures. Now, this is a question, before you even are able to interpret it, you're able to know that it is in a positive direction. You explain the measures that have been taken to increase the rate of economic growth in Uganda. Don't now go to the opposite and bias and get a negative perspective, because it's not asking you for a negative perspective. It's on the onset. This particular question is actually pointing you into a direction of the positives. What has government done? What has government of Uganda done to be able to increase the rate of economic growth? So this requires a student to give measures which are already on ground, and therefore they're using past tense, past participle, has, have. Suggestive answers can be like this one. Improved infrastructure, we've already talked about that. And then you keep looking at the positives, positives, positives. This one is asking you to only look at the positive. It's already a biased question, but for the positive. Political instability. This destroys productive infrastructure. For example, it destroys factories and roads, which bring production to a standstill, leading to shortages in the market and hence increasing prices of goods. This one now is an answer that can help you with the previous one, which is asking you for a negative. If you find us asking for the negative, then political instability would also bring about increase in prices. And it will also discourage investors, which would discourage or would bring down levels of production and outputs, and therefore increase in prices. The last two questions we have here, explain the effects of economic growth in Uganda and also assess the effects of economic growth in Uganda. Now you will see that these questions are all pointing in the same direction. The two questions require both positive and negative outcomes because it's saying explain the effects. An effect, it could be a positive, it could be a negative. Assess, once you see the word assess, that word is actually calling you to balance up the question with the positive and the negative. You're able to critique. That is where your critical analysis skills are being called out. So some of the sample answer of a positive effect would be increase of government revenue. Okay, explain effects of economic growth in Uganda, increase of government revenue. However, there's a negative part which would also say that it leads to rural-urban migration, okay? And everyone leaves the rural and moves into the urban. And when they come to the urban, they are looking for blue-collar jobs. And therefore, our sector that is agro-based becomes compromised. So discuss the benefits of economic growth in Uganda would require only the positive outcomes of the process. Explaining costs of economic growth in Uganda would now bring out your critical analysis skills to now show us the negative outcomes of the process. Okay, and finally, we'll just do one more and then we would call it a day. Next slide, sample questions still. There are some concepts in economics which are negative in nature, such that even when one is asked to explain or assess the effects, only negative effects are given. Sometimes set as demand for outcomes indirectly when they use keywords such as case for and against. What are the case against, arguments for and against? Such questions are set using qualifier that is called discuss. And when you find discuss, this has been very common. It's asking you to argue for and against. So some of those, but there are some questions in economics that actually will just bring out the negative nature of the question. I'll finally go to the last part. The use of words may change, but the answers are always going to be the same. If you find a question that is asking you to explain the importance or asking you to explain the significance, or it's asking you to explain the uses, then that is going to be calling you for only value. You're adding value. Importance, significance, use, those are values. Okay, explain the importance of national budget in Uganda, explain the significance of a national budget in Uganda, explain the uses of a national budget in Uganda. It's really the same question. And the sample answer would be, it can be used to generate government revenue. Government identifies tax in the budget and non-tax sources of revenue. It can also be used to promote economic growth because the government provides incentive to producers to lower the costs to increase output. Finally, and this is at the end, as an economic student, what are you really looking out for? What do you add to the economy after studying economics? So these are some of the things that you add to the economy. You can be an economist, okay? You can be an economist who studies the economy and is able to make policies and is able to communicate to other players in the market space what they need to be doing, making good decisions. You can also be a real estate agent because you're looking out for resources and how to utilize those resources. You're looking out for land and how to be able to attach it to the people who need it. So you're a real estate agent. You can also be a market researcher, remember, because you are doing price theory. You're looking at the forces of demand and supply. So you're looking at where is the good market? Where should we be able to market our goods? You can be a buyer. You can be a sales manager. You can be an advertising account manager. You can also be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is a discipline that comes out of the mother discipline of economics. You can also have do labor relations consultancy. You can be a human resource, that's a labor relations consultancy. You can be a stockbroker. You can also be a financial analyst. You can be a loan officer because you need to be able to help the entrepreneurs, the small micro enterprises to be able to access cheap sources of credit and be able to get to do business. So you're a loan officer, you assess the risks that are embedded in a particular loan and the loan size and how to help your clients to upgrade. You can also be a civil engineer because you're building roads that reduce production costs. You're linking the market to the production areas. So you're a civil engineer. You can be a bank teller. You can be a customs inspector. You can be an urban and regional planner. You can also be a business geographer. Yeah, because you're taking people. Eco-tourism is also another profession that comes out of economics. And you can also be an auditor and an accountant. Thank you very much. I hope you have learned something today, and in the next, we shall be able to look at theories and also look at our graphs.
Thank you so much, Teacher Flavia. Can we invite some questions? I don't know what you think. Teacher Flavia?
Yes, please.
Can we invite some questions?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We are now open for questions. Please feel free to ask questions.
In case you have any question concerning the presentation, kindly ask.
There were also some questions that were in the chat room, but I think I must have missed it. Are there some questions on your side?
Austin, unmute. Austin, unmute. First unmute before you talk.
Okay. Good evening to everyone. I would love to ask about the hanging answers, like the market instead of the size of market. So let me ask, if I use an answer like political climate, is it a hanging answer or not?
Austin, thank you very much. Political climate is a neutral. It's a neutral concept. It can be a political climate that is good. It can also be a political climate that is bad. So the political climate can be favorable. It can also be unfavorable. So it becomes a hanging statement. You have to now be able to properly qualify it to say that it is an unfriendly political environment that discourages investors.
Thank you.
Okay, in case you have a question. Okay. Teacher Flavia, some was saying that you rushed a bit on the last part of the presentation.
Oh, okay.
What
there
can
are
we
some rushing on the last part of the presentation. I beg to reshare it. Okay.
Okay.
Is it okay if I can reshare that last part?
Okay.
Why you basically, I think I'll do the last two slides so that I am able to try and see if that's where I lost him. Now, there are some words, some keywords, importance, significance, uses that really call for the same answers. And this would be, for example, explain the importance of a national budget in Uganda. That question would really be similar to explain the significance of a national budget in Uganda. It would also be the same as explain the uses. Now, I think what this is trying to point out for us is that when you find a word like significance, don't get intimidated by it. You should know that it actually means the same as uses. It should mean the same as importance. So if you have read your notes and you have read the importance of the national budget in Uganda, when you find one that is asking what is the significance of the national budget of Uganda, don't say, I didn't read that, I don't know that. No, this keyword that you have underlined is actually the same as the importance. So let's get exposed to as many similar words. What is the different presentation of a keyword? Just a keyword can knock you off a question. And yet you would have actually known this. And they were asking for the importance in that question. And you're like, I didn't know the word significance, but you knew the importance. So that is very important for us to understand those words so we don't get to lose out on our marks. And then the final one, I was trying to encourage us and say that there are so many carriers that we can in economics. If you don't find it in the marketplace, you can create it yourself. Okay, you can actually be with your economics, you're able to know why there's the reason what's the justification of having a loan officer. The loan officer is basically there to help us have access to cheap capital, cheap finances, credit that we can put in our businesses and grow them. So we increase on our production. And therefore, we have loan officers. Civil engineers are related to economics because they help us build infrastructure. Infrastructure helps us to be closer to the market, and therefore it reduces our production costs. So these are different professions that we can have in economics. They help us to really understand how we can fit in. So don't be excited about your economics. And sometimes when you look at some of these different professions in the field out there, it motivates you to even go and have a niche. When I say niche, I mean you can zero down and say, for me, I am going to really look at money and banking and micro lending and small and micro enterprises. That is my area. And as an economist, I want to really thrive in that area. Doesn't mean that you leave all the other economic concepts behind, but it means that when you come out, you already have something to look forward to doing in the market space. So understand them more, go out and look at what they're doing, appreciate their work, read more about them. And when you finally come out, we will be celebrating you. We have some questions. We have some hands up.
Okay. Yes, Komakech, unmute.
Okay, thank you, Madam, for today's presentation. I have one question. Is it allowed to skip a line when presenting answers during examination?
That's a good question. What do members think? What do members think about that one? I have no objection. I think when you skip, you make your work more clear. You want to have clear work. You don't want to merge up your points. So I think it's okay. But what do other members say? I think it is okay to skip a line and then move on.
Okay, thank you, Teacher Flavia. Kakira Secondary.
Yes, Kakira Secondary.
We are failing to get them. Let's try Mataya Richard. Mataya, unmute. Okay, Komakech. Okay, Mataya, yes, go on.
Yes, thank you, Madam, for that articulated submission. However, I wanted to make a simple clarification on the other issue where one is saying, is it possible to skip a line? Of recent, yes, of recent, they made those adjustments and they disqualify it, skipping lines between your work. It is now not needed. However, previously it was very okay. It's until this 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much, Richard.
Okay. Austin.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I have a question. How do we answer a question that needs to explain a theory? For example, explain the Keynesian theory of population.
How do you answer a question that requires you to
explain
the Keynesian theory of population?
Yeah.
That one, I thought we would look at theories and graphs, but I'll point you into a direction. Now, first of all, you need to know the author of the theory? That's a good background for you as you answer. The author of the theory, what was he advocating for? He's talking about population, he's talking about interest, he's talking about money, he's talking about unemployment as well, okay? So you need to understand what he was advocating at that time when he came up with the theory, and then you begin to talk about the particular perspective to population. Because he has 3 different perspectives. Now you have to know the content for the population that you're going to be speaking about. We will be covering theories and graphs in next Wednesday. And we will cover Keynesian theory as well, and maybe 4 more other theories.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Lugwana SS.
Yes, please. By the names of yes, by the names of Ombalike Whispers. And my question is, if they ask you a question like what are the bases of monopoly, how can you approach that question? Next is, if they ask you that account for the increasing prices in an economy, how do you approach that question?
Okay, I'm on call with Mr. Richard. Mr. Richard, you're going to take on the first question, basis of monopoly. Now, when they say what are the basis of monopoly, I'll give a submission and I'll also allow Teacher Richard to also add on. They are asking you what are the conditions that justify, why would you want monopoly, the basis for monopoly? Why would you want to advocate for monopoly? I would give an example because of compromise of quality of goods, compromise of quality of goods that are given out to the market. And one of them is a public good like health, okay? There's a basis. It justifies that it should be monopoly. It should be held in the hands of the government. Education, for instance, that's a basic good. When you give it out to free market play, competition, then you have all sorts of qualities coming in, good, bad. You leave a lot for the customer to sort. So when they ask you for the basis of that market structure monopoly, why should you actually have a one sole player in the production of goods and services for a particular sector? And the second one was, what are the reasons for price increases? Was that the second question? And then I'll also give Teacher Richard an opportunity. Now for prices increasing, there's so many factors. Once you have gone into price theory, you will understand that the prices increasing of a particular inequality may be caused by so many social factors, economic factors meaning the prices and the forces of demand and supply, but also the social factors depending on, for example, instabilities like we have just seen, infrastructure development. You need to be able to categorize your answers and put your bullet points in those different compartments and say, under price theory, what qualifies price increases? Could it be the sources of the factors of production? Can we look at the resources, raw materials? If the raw materials are scarce and have reduced, that can cause an increase in price. However, if you have infrastructure, those are social factors. Also go under your small compartment and write social factors and list those points: infrastructure, political, those different points. Yes. Teacher Richard, you had something?
Yes.
There are some questions also. Oh, yes, Teacher Richard, you can go ahead.
My network is disturbing a bit. I did not hear the question well.
When you ask a question, what is the basis for monopoly? What is your expectation? What does the setter expect from you? And then the second question was, what are the causes of price rises? How do you answer those kind of questions? How do you organize your information? I think here it's also calling for another skill of organizing our information. Yes, Teacher Richard. Teacher Richard has a challenge with network, but I hope that has been helpful. Has it been helpful, or you need a little more clarity?
I think it was clear. Austin, you want to say something?
I'd love to ask, for example, when comparing two maybe aspects, and they have told you to give examples. So is it necessary that you should first have a full stop, then you say, for example, or you can just write it within the point without breaking it into two?
Thank you, Austin. I think that one is for grammar. Your full stop should always come after your point, your statement, your justification. Do not put a full stop and then you continue to, for example. That would be grammatically wrong. So your full stop should always come at the end of your statement or your argument that you want to propose. Is that okay, Austin?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
There are some
Lubona?
questions.
Okay.
Let me just slide into the chat room. There are some questions that have really been there for quite some time.
Okay.
The first question is coming from Kakira Secondary School. It says, is it a must that in paper 2, you must put an example in every point? That's a good question. Remember, we said in paper 2, we are looking for application, and we want to see that you have been able to put your understanding to the theory in paper 1. Theory 1, paper 1 is basically asking you for theory and concepts, economic concepts. Are you able to recall them? Are you able to restate them? Are you able to reproduce them? When it comes to paper 2, really are looking for you. Are you able to make good sense out of what you have learned in theory? So it would be very good to give an example. If you can't afford to give an example, we also said that it is also good for you to know and have your numbers and statistics when you go into to read about these concepts. Try to read about them in the context of Uganda and look at what are the figures there. When we look at our budget, how much are we spending on agriculture as compared to the total budget? Why is it critical as a young economist for you to be able to point the direction, to point policymakers into a direction of increasing the amount that is allocated for the agriculture area? So yes, it's important to have some examples and also some statistics. Why do some economists argue that income inequality may be desirable at early stages of development in an economy? Income inequality may be desirable at some early stages of development in an economy. Wow, that's a good question. And someone is actually saying yes. Why? Why do some economists argue that income inequality is desirable at early stages of development in an economy? Well, maybe it propels us to work harder. When you have income inequalities, then you have more people that are actually going to be working and doing all the jobs that need to be worked on. Like an industrialized nation, first of all, needs a lot of labor-intensive workers. And so income inequality begins to stratify the economy's labor into those that do the foundation jobs that help the economy to grow. So maybe that would be a good a reason. I would also call for Teacher Richard to give us some of this. But when you're looking at income inequalities, you're also looking at those that the majority that get the jobs done, the majority that do the trench jobs, the dirt, they get their hands into the dirt. And when an economy is young and it is a developing economy, there's going to be a lot of that kind of work. If you go to a developed country, you'll find that there's very little work that is working on the foundations of the economy. Things like building roads, putting up buildings, things like they had dirty trench jobs because it's a developed country. But in the developing country, there's a lot of that labor-intensive work. And in developing countries, you also have low technical skill of people. And even the technical skill is not going to be absorbed as fast as the one that is not technical. The informal jobs are going to be more in a developing country than in a developed country. In the developed country, you have more structured jobs and more blue-collar jobs. In a developing country, you have more informal jobs, more jobs that do not call for a lot of formality. And so you don't need a lot of skills. Those are some of the things that would be argued in that. Kakira Secondary School, is it a must that I must show how and why in every point? And what if I don't show? Am I penalized? Well, you're not penalized, but one who does and goes the extra mile earns more marks. It's important in economics to understand the how and the why, but also to be able to express it every time you have an opportunity to do so. There are some questions that may leave you no room. You just state. Once you state, give, list, those kinds of questions. But the how and why is what we call the second, third order. You're calling for application, you're calling for analysis, you're calling for understanding, okay? Once you want to understand, you want to know how, why. That's understanding level 2. Level 3, application. Why, how do you do this? You want to apply what is in theory into what is in practice. So it calls for level 2 and level 3 of, again, lower order thinking, because lower order is 3 stages and higher order is also 3 stages. So you're not penalized, but you may miss some marks. So try to go the extra mile. This is from SMAG. Account for wage differential in Uganda. Examine the factors that determine the level of wage in Uganda. Can you help distinguish between the 2 questions? The first question is account for wage differential in Uganda. The second is examine the factors that determine the level of wage in Uganda, okay? They could have similar answers, but the way you structure those answers is what now becomes a critical point of reference. Account for wage differential. Now here, account is your qualifier and your concept is differential of wages in Uganda. That's the economic concept. You're looking at different wages being given to people. So you're accounting for that. So you may have all sorts of answers coming from the education, technical, to the social factors, okay? Accounting for the wage differential in Uganda. It may come, for example, you have industrialized jobs for the smaller sector, formal sector, but you also have the agriculture sector, which is really poorly resourced in terms of tools and in terms of the mechanics that are employed into the agriculture sector. So that causes the subsistence earnings that come out of that. Those are some of the examples that can come as answers in that area. However, when you come for the next question, examine the factors that determine the level of wage in Uganda. You want to look at the different factors that determine what someone must earn, okay? I don't know, the government has not yet set the wage level for the country, where it will be illegal for you to pay somebody below the wage level. But when you're looking at the factors that determine the level of wage, you're going to have similar answers. The way you present them is critical. How is taxation being used as an instrument for economic control in Uganda? How is taxation being used as an instrument for economic control in Uganda? We looked at a little bit of that. We had a sample question in there, and we said taxation is going to help us to raise our growth of economic growth because it opens revenues. So it's going to control economic control. It is going to be able to determine our targets. It's going to be able to determine how we spend on our budgets and what we will get from tax revenue into expenditures. So it's going to be able to help us to measure our growth, how we are able to find taxable income, and how we're going to employ that revenue into development. That would be a sample answer for this particular question. Distinguish between mobility of labor and immobility of labor. This is basically asking you about labor. You have to know mobility and immobility. What do they both stand for? Now, distinguish is a qualifier that is calling for you to be able to draw out the contrasts. How are they different? Mobility of labor, the ability to freely move. Immobility of labor, the aspect that inhibits labor to move freely. So you're distinguishing between those two concepts. So that particular question from Paul or Tim is really asking us to distinguish, to make a difference between the two concepts, mobility and immobility of labor. Yeah, this is an apology from Richard. I'm sorry that my network is okay. Briefly help me explain the factors that affect price elasticity of demand. Now, I'll give you a sample answer, okay? Price elasticity of demand. Now, the effect of price changes does not affect significantly the quantities being demanded, elasticity. A product that is going to be, that does not have an outstanding difference in demand. For example, if there's a slight change in the price, then you're going to have a big change in the quantity demanded. That means the product is inelastic. It has an inelastic demand. So when you are asked a question, explain the factors that affect price elasticity, you're mostly going to be looking at the features of the products, the features of that commodity that is being put on the market. That features, you're going to be looking at the features of it, because the features of the product are what is going to determine whether it will have an inelastic or an elastic demand. The rate of change of demand in response to the change in prices. There's another question, the next question here that says, is it necessary to always introduce a concept, say, by giving definition before answering the real question at hand? Well, good creative writing would demand for you to do that, because it shows that you have understood the concept and therefore you are in line and you are aligned to give the examiner what they're looking for. So it may earn you 1 or 2 marks, but it is good practice instead of diving into the question. Is there specific qualifier when asked about roles? Is there specific qualifier when asked about roles? Is there a specific qualifier? This question is not very clear, Kakira, secondary school. Maybe you can rephrase it. Is it necessary to skip lines? That one we have talked about. Teacher Richard talked about and said that in the past 2 years, it was okay. But now you will be penalized if you skip lines. Just continue, don't skip lines. Okay, skip lines, okay. Finally, Austin is saying, when comparing two concepts, should the comparison qualifier come? Okay, we already answered that. We already answered that. That a full stop should not be in the middle of a sentence. It comes at the end of a sentence. That's writing practice. And therefore, comparing two concepts, should the comparison qualifier come after a full stop, or it should stand as 1 point? It should be 1 point because you are making an argument. You're putting forward a justification. So you're comparing in one breath before you put the full stop. Your full stop should come at the end, my dear. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Okay. Yes, Ravona.
Yes, my question is, you have said that account for need is the reasons. Now, someone asks a question that account for increasing rate of unemployment in Uganda. Then I need you to
network.
Me how you can phrase or how you can state the point.
Ravona, I think I didn't get what you said, but what I picked is that account for giving is equivalent to giving reasons. Account for the increasing rate of unemployment in Uganda. Account for it. Can you give an accountability for why there is an increasing rate of unemployment? You probably are being asked a question and you want to know whether it is the same as give the reasons. Yeah, it's the same. In that particular question, if you said account for the increasing rate of unemployment, it would be similar to give the reasons for the increasing rate of unemployment. You'd have to give the same answers. Only this time you structure your answers as reasons, okay? And then there was another part of the question, but then I lost it. Do you want to say it again?
Yeah.
Ravona, is that good enough?
My part of the question, like we are talking about the reasons. Now, particularly this question is talking about increasing rate of unemployment. But now the reason, among the reasons, now how do you state the point? Do you begin with it? Do you begin with two? That's my question.
Do you begin with what?
You begin with two. We know that when we are mentioning reasons, we have to begin with two or in order to. But now I'm seeing this question particularly, it is saying account for increasing rate of unemployment. Now, does it need me to begin with two or it? Or I just mentioned the point constantly.
Teacher Flavia?
Yes, my dear.
Yes, I want one of the examiners to throw some light onto
yes,
that
please.
point of the point of skipping a line is on the call. Okay. Yes, Teacher Titus. Yes, you can go on and talk about that point. Hope they can hear you well.
Teacher Flavia, hope you can get me well.
Yes, please.
Teacher has talked about skipping a line when a candidate, after giving a point by a candidate. And I was telling him, or I'm saying that it's okay, because the most important thing is for the candidate or for the examiner not to mix the candidate's points. There are some candidates that may not be in position to paragraph their work very well. You cannot simply see where one paragraph starts from and where the other one ends. So in that way, the candidate that keeps line will be doing the exactly where one point ends and where the other second point starts from. However, for a candidate with a good handwriting, it may not be possible because that calls for consuming a lot of stationery. I don't know if that is clear.
Okay, it is clear.
Okay. Yes, it is.
Okay. Another one, teacher Titus, what is the best qualifier when asked about the roles?
When we are looking at the role, since we are looking at what something does, the best qualifier to be here we are looking at it provides, it encourages, it contributes, it reduces, that kind of thing. Not help to provide. It should not be an outcome, but something that is ongoing. Almost it from the functional perspective, because this is something that is done on a daily basis
Okay, thank you so much. Chapter, is anything else?
Wow, that is very good. Thank you very, very much. Rwanda had something, and I see his hand is still up. He was asking that if you asked for account for the increasing rate of unemployment, and then the roles give reasons for increasing unemployment. Those questions would still have the similar answers.
Now, okay, now when we are counting for something, to account for, depending on what we are dealing with, if the concept is a policy, for instance, is a policy, we give the objective. But if it's not a policy, we give the causes. Now, when it comes to unemployment, account for unemployment, they're asking for the causes of unemployment. Account for fluctuation of agricultural products, prices of agricultural products. Here we are giving the causes of the fluctuation. Now, I don't know if I'm clear on that. To account for, sometimes we give the causes of something, but sometimes it is calling for the objectives of something. Now, for the unemployment, fluctuation of agricultural products, accounting for, we are giving the causes of unemployment, causes of fluctuation. When we are accounting for, let's say, the development plan, because it is a policy, we are giving the objectives of planning or the reasons for planning.
Great. Oh, wow.
For this, at this level, I think it's better to handle the candidate's question. Account for unemployment, because the question is asking for the causes of unemployment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe the last one. What is the approach to this question? Developing countries should adopt protectionism rather than free trade.
Rather than free trade. The right approach would have been the argument. Because the two policies they cannot take place at the same time. You cannot have free trade and at the same time protection. So you would a candidate to either argue for protection and then against protection, or you argue for free trade and against free trade, because you can decide either to do protection or to do free trade. Now, the same question can be argument, countries should undertake agriculture instead of industry. Then for the two, because they are complementary, you can do the two policies at the same time. Then that means that you give the argument for agriculture, then against agriculture, then argument for industrialization, and then those ones against industrialization. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay.
I don't know. Is it okay, Kakira Secondary School?
Sorry?
I think it is a good explanation. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. And we look forward to next Wednesday when we shall have more discussion. Thank you, Mr. Kaziba, and thank you for our examiner on call. Over to you, Mr. Kaziba.
Thank you so much, Teacher Flavia, for the wonderful presentation. I just wanted to get that we get the clarification from the head also about it, because Teacher Richard's network was not good, so he was not able to give in to supplement. Teacher Flavia, may I first invite you to give your concluding remarks to the candidates before we close the session?
Yes, please. I'm hoping that we shall have another session, maybe next Wednesday, and be able to touch base with some of these issues and many more questions that you'll come up with. But I would like to encourage you as much as possible to just get familiar with all those different parts of a question and different parts of an answer. Very important. And even as you discuss them, you should be in discussions. You know, one thing about economics is that two heads are better than one. You have seen how we all come together to be able to make sense of something, and we finally go successfully in the right direction. So please discuss, and when you discuss, emphasize those points. What are the keywords? What does this question look out for? Learn to do good interpretation, but you will only gain that skill if you can discuss with each other. So until we meet again next time, please collect all your questions and come with them. If you can collect them, type them, and send them earlier on, it will be very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Teacher Flavia, for the wonderful presentation. We cannot thank you enough. We are really very grateful. And I'm very sure the students have really benefited a lot, and all the teachers that have been on the call. You have been asking for the presentations. Dear students and teachers, we have already shared the presentations in the chat. And Teacher Flavia, if you do not mind, kindly share your number in the chat such that students and the teachers can also reach on you for consultations, because they have not exhausted all the questions they had. But if it is possible, you can share such that they can reach on you for more economics things. I want also to thank Teacher Richard and all the schools that have been on call, but allow me to thank the Ministry of Education, RENU, and all our organization, UICT. But before we go, allow me to invite Mr. Ronald Dungu to say something and also to officially close this session. Mr. Ronald, you are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Kaziba. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are very clear.
Yes, I want to thank Teacher Flavia and Teacher Titus and the other teacher whose name I did not get for leading us in this session. I must say I joined very, very late, but I was excited to hear the students asking questions and our teachers responding. I know that we need more time to really, really get to the bottom of the many questions, and that is the reason why we support the program on closing the learning gap. Dear teachers and students who are on the call, it is very important for us to come together and talk to each other. We come from different corners of this country, and we are all the same. We are Ugandans, we are citizens, we are all learners in S6 who want to progress to the next level and participate in the development of this country. So then it is very important that all of us receive almost the same education. And that is why we are calling upon everyone, the teachers, to please accept and always join this call when it is available. We are trying to close the learning gap. I know we are late. You are candidates. We should have started this in your senior 5, but it is always good to start. I want to thank the teachers who have organized the students to be on this call. It takes some bit of time on your side, but thank you for organizing. And to the students, thank you for listening in, but we are hoping that you are also going to share your message to the next friend when you're on holiday until when we do exams. With that, allow me also to thank Holistic E-Learning Platform, Research Education Network Uganda, UICT, and all the other people who are coming together to make this happen. And to thank you, Mr. Kaziva, who is the lead on this program, for sparing your time to support the whole country. I want to say that as a Ministry of Education, we are happy that we are piloting this, and there is a lot of learning that we are taking from here. To the teachers, we would like you to record your students to tell us what has been helpful in these sessions. At some point, we will need to hear voices of students telling us whether these sessions have been helpful and whether we should continue or not. And we shall wait for the recordings on our platform. A 1-minute recording, a 2-minute recording is good enough. With those few comments, I want to thank everybody who has remained on this call up to now and declare this session closed for today. Thank you.